What was the moment that made you hate somebody you once cared about? Guy I was friends with throughout high school and for a year or two after harmed his then girlfriend who I was also friends with. She called me, crying, and asked me to come to their apartment at 3 a.m. Got there and she was all sorts of messed up. The guy was sitting on the edge of his bed, shaking his head, going, "She made me do it. She broke my damn statue." She accidentally knocked off a collector statue he had placed on his dresser when she got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. He called the cops and he got arrested. Piece of absolute crap. I hope that statue was worth it because his freedom certainly isn't. Story 2. My grandma lied about her first boyfriend's mental state and about him mistreating him to get him locked up in a constant care senior home when she decided she didn't like him. He passed away 2 months after, and I think it's partially the shock of the betrayal. He was one of the kindest, most patient, and most reserved men I knew. He would go out of his way to move mountains for people with a smile on his face and truly no expectation for anything. I guess that naivety is why he loved my grandma. I knew my grandmother was sort of a witch, but only then did I truly realize to what extent. After that, she also got too senile to properly hide it. Any shred of love for her I had just evaporated. She can be gone as far as I'm concerned. Story 3. My mom told me a month after my kid's dad passed away that any survivor benefits I got should be signed over to her to pay her back for the things she paid for while I grew up. This time I didn't know if my kids would get them. He worked under the table for years, and who thinks taking money from their grandkids is okay? The thing she paid for was housing and food. Once I got a job, I had to buy all my own school supplies, clothes, feminine products, etc. A month later, she told me she needed money for a car and knew I had it. I didn't, and would be over to pick up the money when her boyfriend got home. I hung up on her and haven't talked to her since that day. 11 years and counting. Story 4. Ex-roommate stopped paying rent and blocked the landlord and everything. When the landlord forced me to be the middleman, he lied to my face about not having any money left. Can't afford food, a whole sob story. So I bought him groceries and got in contact with his parents to express how worried I was because I could see him spiraling. His parents told me they sent him rent plus a few hundred extra every month. To this day, I don't know where the money was going, but he was 3 months late on rent. On the day the lease ended, he moved his stuff out and left garbage everywhere and food rotting on the fridge. I spent nearly 2 days cleaning by myself, but had a job waiting for me and ran out of time. So everyone lost their security deposit for the apartment being trashed. And when I confronted him, his excuse was, "I can't be in that place anymore. I'm putting it behind me." 1 month prior to all this, I'd have called him a best friend. Now if I think about him too much, I get so angry my hands start shaking. Story 5. I lost a good friend after a roommate experience as well. Agreed to let him move in at an incredibly low room rental rate for LA, basically enough to cover a wee bit of the total rent and the increased utilities. Within 2 months, he had gone fired from his job and made no effort to get another one. Also, I knew he'd have his toddler daughter occasional weekends. Truth was, it was every weekend. Friday morning till Monday night. And when he wanted to bring his girlfriend over to get hammered, he'd just lock his kid and her barely walking baby out of his room to wander my house. Evicting him was a nightmare, too. He, 40 male, brought his mom to help him move the day before I was going to file eviction paperwork. I watched them try to steal my things, and she yelled in my face about what an evil witch I was to kick her son out. I'd known this guy since we were in junior high together. Petty revenge. His ex asked me to testify about his awful parenting during a custody hearing. He doesn't have to worry about those weekends anymore. Story 6. I have a cousin I used to like. Active in veteran support circles, had been honored at events in baseball and hockey games. Lots of fun, non-judgmental young veteran. The family's golden boy. Especially compared to his younger brother, who others saw as a black sheep who liked to cause drama for no reason. Became even more of a hero after being diagnosed with cancer, presumably as a result of the burn pits in Iraq. I found out last year that he had mistreated his younger brother as teens, which I found out directly from the victim's cousin. And thanks to our state's laws, is bringing charges against his older brother, despite how much time has passed at the recommendation of his therapist. Not only that, but I found out that much of his service in Iraq had been wildly exaggerated, like desk work in a secure area during the relatively peaceful period after Saddam's fall. And a lot of his posturing as a spokesman for veterans was actually him taking credit for the real work being done, his younger brother, a victim, an Afghanistan vet. The guy can pass away from his cancer now for all I care. And honestly, it might be the best outcome for him at this point. Story 7. Former best friend. I supported her and gave her a place to stay so she could work in my city. At the time, we were working in the same field with complementary skills. We made a great team. Until the lockdown hit and I was laid off from my company. Her company went remote, so she moved back to her parents' house. I asked her for help, just looking at my resume or my freelance work for her opinion. She would brush me off continuously. Then her company needed a freelancer, so she tossed me some work, which I was extremely grateful for, and knocked it out of the park, and her boss loved it. But she started withholding project information from me, and I found out she was telling them to pay me less, and going in to sabotage my work between me submitting it and her giving it to the boss. By the end of our friendship, I was depressed, unable to find a job because of the lockdown, and when she tried to underpay me, I quit mid-project and haven't spoken to her since. I've been a lot happier. Got my freelance work published several times over, and I'm applying to grad school in my dream field. Last I checked, her company made her the sole person in her position and laid off half the staff. Story 8. My buddy had been in love with this girl for years. We'll call her Angela. Angela and my friend had great chemistry growing up and eventually started dating. It seemed meant to be, really. She eventually moved off to college out of state, across the country. In fact, they tried long distance. She came back to her hometown to visit, and everything seemed normal until my buddy was contacted by some random guy on Snapchat. This rando told my buddy that he was also in a relationship with Angela. It had been for months. I couldn't really believe it, so we asked for proof, and we came to find out Angela was on his family Christmas cards. Though it gets worse, or better, if you think it's funny. The rando comes with more information, claiming Angela had actually been in other serious relationships and had multiple other people she slept with for substances and money. Then after dropping that bomb, the rando also claims she dropped out of college and is actually moving back into her hometown to escape her college town because of the situation she found herself in. Angela also stole $500 from the rando before making her way back to her hometown, along with thousands of dollars from her other boyfriends and plugs. After all was said and done, she fled home once again and moved to California, last I heard. She broke one of my best friend's hearts, and it was truly one of the most painful things I've witnessed. Story 9. I have a coworker that is recently out of a long prison sentence. I did my best to tell him he was on the right track and that I thought he was a good person regardless of his past. I took time out of my day to drive him home because he couldn't get a license because he had several DUIs over a decade ago. It is about an hour round trip every day. I also took a personal day off to take him to get his license when he was finally allowed to get one. It took all day. That's a full day that I didn't get paid. I bought him lunch on several occasions because I knew he was behind on bills. I got him a nice Christmas gift to help him get started with his job, to invest in some stuff for work. He's never returned favors or reciprocated. We were good buds when working together. It was usually more fun working with him and made the day go faster. One day, I asked my boss if he could help me pack up some of the stuff we had at a job location that we had been working at for 2 weeks. I wasn't going to be able to finish up the job and make it look nice, and pack up all the stuff before the store closed. He gets there and immediately starts giving me crap. Like full-blown yelling at me because he had to take time out of his day to help me with my crap. It was actually the company's crap. It almost came to blows. I won't stop helping people, but that's the last time I will help him. Story 10. I must have been about 16 at the time. I was drinking beer around a friend's house I always used to cycle to and from school with. Spent loads of weekends chilling at his Xbox and just generally vibing with him and his sister. This particular night was his birthday and we had a couple other friends over, one of which was a girl who had recently broken up with her boyfriend. We were still pretty young, so she did not handle her drink well. As the night goes on, he's increasingly creepy towards her. I always knew he fancied her, but until this point, he kept it relatively hidden and non-creepy. It was when she was in delirious tears and slurring her words that he started to give her more drink. I told him she's had enough, and I'll walk her home. His response to me through a harsh whisper was, "Dude, screw off. I'm trying to get with her here." I instantly punched him 5 times. I remember each one clearly as they wiped the disgusting smirk off his face. The party quickly disbanded and another friend and I got the girl home safely. When we were in school, the word spread pretty quickly. Said I threw wuss punches, which was quite funny, considering he said that with a black eye. Glad I did what I did. I'm picturing the disgusting smirk just melting with each punch. Poetic justice. Story 11. 2 of my second cousins. Both are siblings to each other. Mary has 2 kids and cheated on, that we know of, 2 of her ex-husbands. Tom was sent to prison for buying and distributing. He was also a schmuck to his mother, and is still a schmuck to his mother despite being out of prison on good behavior for around 3 years now. Why do I hate Mary now? She allowed him to babysit her 2 girls, 11 and 4, while she and her new husband, the father to the youngest, went on a cruise. I've lost respect for both of them, and I truly hate Tom and Mary both. He's a messed up individual. And she's just stupid and endangered her children. Story 12. I became friends with this guy in 8th grade, but our friendship ended freshman year on Halloween night. I was going trick-or-treating with some friends and my sister. He didn't have anyone to go trick-or-treating with, so I invited him to come with us. Everything was fine until he started being edgy and made jokes about people with autism and disabilities. Then when he saw someone dressed as Elmo, he screamed, "Dictator Elmo!" We were all getting scared because he was screaming all this stuff around children, so we all decided to go home. But while we were going home, he kept walking into the street and moving cars. My sister told him to knock it off because if we get in trouble, then she's responsible because she's the oldest. Then he said to her, "Shut up, witch." That made everyone in the group turn against him. My sister got angry and stormed home while the rest of us followed her and tried to get away from him. When we arrived home, my sister immediately went to our foster mom and told her what happened while one of my friends already went home and the rest of us didn't talk to him for the rest of the night. He acted like it never happened, or that it wasn't a big deal to him. I ignored him for the rest of the year while he kept trying to be friends with me. It's senior year and still aren't friends, and I would like to keep it that way. Story 13. My maternal grandmother, on her last breath, after battling cancer for 10 years, tried to make me promise to never date black men. I tearfully responded, at 15 years old, "Oh, Mom, I'm black too, and I'll never promise you that." She didn't care if I went to college. She didn't care if I pursued my dreams. She didn't care if I was happy. The woman that helped raise me used her final moments with me and on this earth to remind me of her vitriolic discrimination rather than encourage me in any way. This moment tainted every fond memory I ever had of her. I can't say that I miss her. For context, I am biracial. My father is black and my mother is white. I have lighter skin compared to my other 3 siblings. She had previously tried to convince my younger brother that he wasn't actually black, just tan. He has suffered identity issues for the rest of his life as a result. Story 14. Tried asking my best friend, who also happened to be manager at the time, what was wrong when he came into work in a particularly bad mood and it destroyed a friendship. He's usually quiet when he's in a bad mood, but that day he was trying to push my buttons and say personally hurtful things about me and people I cared about. At the end of the day, I tried taking him aside and talking to him about it, and he told me nothing was wrong and continued treating me poorly. He was mad at me for it. I ended up not moving in with him, which we had planned for a while, and also got a new job so I wouldn't have to work with him anymore. We haven't talked since I got my new job. He ended up getting fired from his manager position because of his attitude, and he lies to people about the entire situation like I'm some horrible person. I guess I wouldn't say I hate him because I do wish him well, but I will never, ever give him any more of my time and energy. From best friend to workplace enemy real quick. Talk about a mood swing. Story 15. I've shared the story before on Reddit, but it fits this question so well. I had a friend in another country who would use my visits there as cover to cheat on her husband, i.e. dropping me at a mall or movie theater, etc., and then going to the nearest motel, and who visited me on my home turf only to disappear for 2 days to fool around with some loser she'd been talking to online, leaving me to field an awkward call from her husband about why she wasn't answering her phone. Why did I remain friends with her, you ask? She had seen me through a very bad time in my life, and I also don't tend to make friends easily, so I wanted to hang on to one of the few I had. Cue to a year or so later, when my father passed away and I was naturally not online very much for a while, eventually logged into a news group that she and I both belonged to. And the first thing I saw was a vitriolic rant she had posted there accusing me of wallowing in loneliness because I had not been online to talk to her. Why did you know my dad had passed away? Yes, she did. At this point, all bets were off. I blocked her on every social media site where I had an account, and then I emailed her husband from a throwaway account, giving him chapter and verse of when she cheated on him. He took their kids, and the 2 of them are now divorced. Petty or childish on my part? Guilty as charged, but she deserved it. Story 16. I had a coworker that I liked. We had a lot in common. We were around the same age, same background, both loved animals, similar taste in music and movies. We'd eat lunch together and chat from time to time. We didn't hang outside of work, but she was a good work friend. One day, after about a year, we were having lunch and talking. She mentioned she was upset because a city bus route was changed and it put the stop near, but not in front of, her house. She lived on a street that was a gateway to a very wealthy area, so many of the workers for these multi-million-dollar homes, maids, nannies, groundskeepers, etc., would ride the bus to get to their jobs at these homes. She was upset about this change because, in her words, now all the poor people will be hanging out near my house each day waiting for the bus. Ugh. I paid too much for my house to deal with that BS. I had to lift my jaw up off the floor. My opinion of her changed from that point forward. I'm guessing she was like that all along, but finally felt comfortable enough to say that in front of me. Disgusting. Needless to say, I backed off the friendship and just kept things professional with her from that point on. I didn't want to be associated with her. Once I left that company, I never saw or heard from her again. Goodbye, good riddance. Story 17. My mother ruined my wedding. She mistreated my wife and her family, tried to engineer problems between me and my grandparents because she was mad I invited them, her parents, to my wedding, threatened to make a scandal during the ceremony. She got uninvited from the wedding, obviously, showed up anyway, started hunting me from room to room a few minutes from the ceremony started, leading me to take 3 shots of tequila just to calm down and not break down at the altar. Got intercepted by the 2 security guys I hired last minute just because of her, and locked her in a room that had a view on the ceremony while my grandma bought me down the aisle instead of her, obviously. That was nearly 10 years ago. I've been waiting for apologies ever since. Instead, I got more cruelty, blackmail attempts, gaslighting, threatening emails. She got sick and survived. Huge bummer. Screw her. I'll have a smile on my face the day she passes away. Alone and miserable, having never met her grandchild who I'm protecting from that psycho. Story 18. The person I was with at the time didn't like the dog that she had to have when we went to the shelter. We didn't live together, but whenever I would go see her, she did not want me to see the dog because she will whine and I'm not dealing with that. Anyway, she had enough with a stupid dog and invited me down one weekend to help her take the dog back to the shelter. She took the dog back without me and told me that the shelter said it was full. If she returned the dog, she would have to put that dog or another one down. She did it anyway. It was not an instantaneous hatred, but it was quite the epiphany. Gradually began seeing her as a monster. Story 19. I wouldn't say this made me hate the person, but our relationship definitely changed. I'm mixed race, for context. I had a great uncle who was white. I was always interested in aviation and even got my pilot's license before epilepsy put an end to that. Anyway, my great uncle had flown in the military and worked with a local nonprofit that maintained and flew old military craft. I spent a lot of my childhood with this man. Really encouraged my interest in flying. I got to go up in a lot of cool craft, and he bought me my first headset when I started flying. Anyway, one day when I was about 16, we took a day trip to Canada with my grandparents. My great uncle, my other great uncle, and my great aunt. My grandpa was driving and there was a guy riding his bike in traffic, outside the bike lane, leaving quite a bit. My grandpa asks, "What in the hell is this guy up to?" My great uncle responds, "What do you expect? He's black." I didn't say anything, but everyone else in the car got on his back. After that, I wasn't as close with him and would find excuses not to spend time with him until his passing. I just couldn't reconcile the man I thought I knew with the casual prejudice he apparently was. I mean, what did he really think about me all those years? If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 20. My dad. We got along fine until I, F, went to high school and puberty and boys started happening. It was like everything we had enjoyed together meant nothing. We used to sit and play Nintendo together, watch movies. He wanted me to enjoy Star Trek, but suddenly his attitude toward me changed completely. Everything we did together after that turned into a lecture of boys only want one thing. I trust you. It's them I don't trust, etc. He did his best to scare away every male friend I had. He listened in on every phone call I had with my first boyfriend and would actively tell us mid-conversation that it's time to hang up now. As I got older and graduated high school, he told me one day I was looking at colleges that didn't raise a loose woman for a daughter, and that I should look into all-girls schools. One day after I fell victim after fighting with a guy, he called me a loose woman again when I came to him for support. I effectively cut him off out of my life at that point. Story 21. I'd been best friends with a guy for all my life. We even went to kindergarten together, and later on we ended up in the same class together for almost 10 years. But then he ended up dating a girl that also was my best friend. The guy, after a while, started to act kind of weird, being silent and all, not talking to me like he used to. But then one day I got a message from him where he explained that he could not stand the thought of me being friends with a girl because I was probably going to sleep with her. He banned me from seeing her, and I had been her friend for over 6 years and had no thought of dating her at all. She helped me through some tough times and was really nice, but I wouldn't date her, especially since she was dating my other best friend. It all ended with a guy banning me from seeing the girl who was really in love with the guy and did what he wanted. So I said that if I couldn't hang out with her, I would not hang out with him either. So here I am, alone, and hate the thought of that I was so close to him, and over a weekend our friendship broke apart entirely. Story 22. She told me and my boyfriend about how her sisters did these terrible things to her when she was a kid, and then she cut her family off, which is understandable, until one of her sisters confirmed that she lied about the terrible things they did to her. At first, I was like, "Are you sure you're not saying this just to cover your back?" But as I listened to my old friend talk about it, I realized the story didn't really add up. I did start losing respect for her before finding out about the lies. When she went from being an actual friend to being the schmuck who goes, "Hey, can you give me a ride from Driftwood to Lockhart at 10 p.m. while it's raining?" Or, "Hey, can you buy me a vape? By the way, I'm in New Braunfels right now." The thing that made me really start on adding her from stuff is when she decided to have a baby without money. a plan, while housing hopping with sketchy dudes. It's a shame because she didn't come off as a schmuck at first. Modern friendships. Story 23. My uncle is my relative. His wife is not. I'm not around them much, but every time I hear stories about things they say, my hate for them grows. The first instance I knew I hated them was as follows. Even though I wasn't present for this, they liked me for some reason and would never speak this way while in front of me. My mom went out to lunch with them once when they were visiting from out of state, and I don't remember how it came up, but my aunt said that the middle class are a burden on the rest of us, and continued to talk about how poor people ruin society for the next hour. They're not that rich. Upper class, but not rich enough to be saying crap like that. My mom left that lunch in tears. We're not wealthy. My mom raised me all on her own. We're usually in a pretty tight budget. I had respect to my mom. I've hated my aunt ever since, and my uncle was on thin ice, but has since broken that ice and embedded himself on the frozen substrate, never to resurface. Story 24. I'll do the reverse one. How I made a person who really cared about me to hate me. I was toxic AF, controlling, manipulative, and liked to give random tantrums like a child. Sometimes I was a good girlfriend, but honestly, the moments I wasn't were more. Poor guy. I hadn't let him breathe for nearly a year. I didn't understand that he had a life besides me, and I wasn't the center of the universe. I was lazy, so not only did I not do anything in my life, but I didn't let him, too. I was such a schmuck and childish girlfriend. We were on vacation with some friends of ours with whom we rent a holiday house, and I gave a tantrum because I wanted to get the main room. The other rooms were beautiful, too, but I just wanted that one. I'm ashamed of what I've done. So childish to give a tantrum in front of others and for a really stupid thing. I didn't realize that the only important thing was to share some quality time with this person and create good memories to share in the future. Instead, if he will ever think back about our relationship, I don't think so, I'll remember how horrific it was. Well, he realized I wasn't the person he wanted to share his life with. I was too dramatic over stupid things and understand it only now. He started to hate me for having hurt him all this time. It's been some months since our breakup. Somewhere he's doing better without me. Maybe he isn't happy yet because he's still recovering from this traumatic experience, but at least, I hope, he's living peacefully. Story 25. We were best friends in kindergarten. Then we got put in different classes after that. He fell in with the jocks, and I fell in with no one. As stereotypical as it sounds, the jocks would make my life hell and he would sit back and watch or join in. Then senior year, he tried to be all buddy-buddy like nothing had ever happened, and I lost my crap on him. Nothing physical, just a bunch of words, but boy did it feel good to get everything out. After that, he realized he messed up. I guess because he was scared that all his friends were abandoning him because they were going to different colleges, so he didn't want to be alone. Well, after being civil for a while, I came to find out he found religion. Good for him. And I found out it was the hateful type of religion. Not good for him. Then he acted in that hate. And being a member of the group, he committed a hate crime against just kinda ever so slightly rubbed me the wrong way, so I cut ties for good. The only time I hear from him are when my mom tells me he posted to wish me happy birthday on Facebook. Pretty sure he wouldn't be wishing me a happy birthday if he knew about me. Story 26. I have an older brother close to me in age. When we were kids, I followed him everywhere. His name was the first thing I learned to say. We had an unconventional childhood with some severe cruelty and neglect, and we'd go for huge walks to get away from home and just talk about the BS. Over time, we got separated a bunch by him going off to prison. He had one bag of grass on him, and he ran afoul of a Mormon judge who was there to scare him straight. I visited when I could, called when I couldn't visit, sent him money for the commissary when I could scrape it together. Not a ton of money. I was poorer than dirt, but whatever I could. For years, I would Western Union him 100 here, a couple hundred there. I knew he was a user. He made connections in prison and sold stuff later on, and of course, ended up using it as well. But I just kept trying to help. I tried sending gift cards after a while, and it became clear that he was recycling the same excuses and garbage, and he stopped contacting me. Our mom passed away. In itself, a good thing. The world became slightly safer that day, and I moved heaven and earth to arrange for funeral in Canada, though she passed away in Idaho just so he could come. I had to borrow a minivan from an in-law, get some weird permits for transporting, all this crap, bought him a ticket and arranged a taxi and did all this crap. Meanwhile, he's alternating calling everyone in the family, getting angry and claiming we stole her insurance. It turns out she had a $500,000 insurance policy but had canceled it to send him money a few months before passing. I wouldn't believe it. He also refused to come to the funeral. I managed to get back almost all the money and buried her in Idaho instead. He called my wife at the time and pestered and threatened her. I called him and told him, "Look, I offered to scrape together a $20,000 funeral while making a very low hourly wage." And he laughed at me when I told him how much I made per hour. Man hasn't worked a legal job at that point for a decade. Screw him. He was my best friend, my only partner in hell. I would have literally covered stuff up for the guy. I did everything I could for him. He's gone to me. The man he is not the boy he was, and I don't plan on ever talking to him again until he's in the ground. Story 27. My dad passed away in November 2012. We were incredibly close and had a wonderful relationship. I was absolutely devastated, and 9 years later, I still have days where I miss him so much I cry all day. My ex-husband told my mom that my dad's passing was really hard on him and they needed to snap out of it. My grief. My ex had met my dad 6 times. In that instant, I hated him. Granted, I had other things that contributed to me hating him, but that was really the final nail in the coffin for me. Taking my loss of a beloved parent and making it all about him and how he felt filled me with a white-hot hatred that still burns. I've since remarried to a wonderful, kind, nurturing man, and I'm living my best life. But I would still hit my ex with my car if I saw him walking down the side of the road. Story 28. I spent most of my life caring for my physically disabled mother. She meant everything to me. I would have, and did, give anything and everything I could to help her. She now has someone else caring for her, so I was finally able to move on with my life. I was getting married a while back. While my mom there, I made the comment, everyone needs to be immunized, of course. Thinking that my mom, who always made sure we had our shots as kids, would surely be immunized. Oh, I'm not getting the immunization. If it is my time and God calls me home, no immunity will stop that. Told her that is literally the point of the immunization. Well, I don't have the money. So I told her it was free and she argued that for a long time. I don't want it to change my DNA. Only God can give us DNA. I told her that isn't even a real thing. She said she would not get immunized and it was wrong for me to try and force it on her. I told her if she won't get immunity, she can't attend. She said, if you don't want me there, then just say so. Don't make up excuses. I told her that I just want her to get a free immunity that could save her life so she can see her son get married. She said I was trying to come between her and what God has told her is right. In that moment, I realized she put her own religious BS over the wedding of her son that gave up so much of his life for her. She didn't get immunity, and my mother did not see me get married. I haven't spoken to her since, and don't care if I ever hear from her again. Story 29. Hate is a strong word, but a recent event seriously changed my feelings for a family I used to see often as a kid. They're my parents as friends, and I played with their kids when I was a kid. The kids are grown and have families now. I don't really see them for the last 20 years or so. One of their family members, an uncle of their family who was really cool when I was a kid, was recently depressed and basically ended it all by refusing to get treated for a chronic disease. It happened both suddenly and slowly. Started over the summer and got to a point where he was not seeking treatment, so they asked me to talk to him as a medical professional. I hadn't seen or talked to the guy for 25 years. Long story short, he refused my help. I went back to the family and said, you guys need to basically drag him to the hospital. He also needs to talk to a therapist. 3 weeks later, he passed away alone in his home. They did nothing. He would dog sit for them, babysit, do their landscaping. He had a family literally a few blocks away, and it is a huge family. Like it's a really big family that is fairly close. Just let the guy pass away. Now they feel guilty. All I could say was good. What a tragic and preventable loss. Story 30. I had to disown my lifelong best friend. I was 37 when I did it. We had been BFFs since 5th grade. Drinking turned him into an absolute piece of human garbage. I have dozens of stories that all warrant disowning him, but the tipping point, when I realized that the person that used to be my best friend is gone and that there's just some terrible person wearing a skin suit around, now was this. I had a mutual friend who was in town for her last remaining family member's funeral, her grandma. Her mom and dad and brother had all passed away separately in the last few years, so this was a huge, heavy deal, and also the last time she would ever have a reason to come back to her hometown. Well, we all went out to a bar. As the drinks kicked in, my ex-friend's switch flipped, and she started in on his standard ranting about how whoever his target for the evening is going to pass away alone because they are a piece of crap that no one will ever love. Except this time, he picked a girl in town for her last relative's funeral, and a table of like 6 of us watched him stand up in the middle of a crowded bar for literally no reason whatsoever and scream at her about how she's a stupid witch that deserves to have no family because she's an unlovable, selfish piece of crap that is going to be alone. Everyone at that table had been friends with each other for like 15 years. We all grew up together. We were tight as heck. Everyone but me hated him from that point on, and none of them have spoken since. I still lived in the same city as him, so I gave him a couple more chances due to proximity. But it just got worse. He has no remaining friends. He's in a super cruel relationship, and he blames all of his friends for abandoning him. He's incapable of admitting that he's the problem. I could write a book on how evil this schmuck became as he grew older and more bitter. I know he uses Reddit, so Hopefully he sees this. Screw you, Dan. You need rehab, and you need serious mental health care. Story 31. A 2-for-1 here. Flaming rage I've never imagined I could feel towards another person before, and now I've got 2 targets. When 2 of my siblings' spouses cheated with each other, and other people, and gaslit my siblings. They had been family, and then when their actions came to light, they're as good as gone to me. They're now ex-spouses, and apparently we know the following because co-parenting still has to happen, which sucks that my siblings can have distance from their oppressors. Confused about the reality my family hates them and acts like they don't exist. The 2 siblings who are the victims here are literally the nicest, most loyal, down-to-earth people I've ever known. Apparently that type makes perfect targets for narcissists. Story 32. 2 of my friends dated on and off since high school before moving in together for maybe 6 to 8 years. She had a special needs daughter from a previous relationship who lived with them. The dad wasn't around much, and my friend was basically the only man in her life from ages 5 to 15. At 15, she was probably at the developmental age of an 8-year-old. When they broke up, my buddy just packed up and left and never talked to the kid. A few days later, he asked her mom if he'd passed away. I literally gave him the come-to-Jesus talk a couple weeks earlier about just sitting the kid down and letting her know what was going on, but he never did. It didn't make me hate him, but I did lose a hell of a lot of respect for him. We're still friends, but not like we were before that. Story 33. This one happened a week ago. To add context to it, I grew up with a physically and verbally cruel father. He towered over me. Him being over 6'5", and I was a little kid, so there wasn't anything I could have done to stop him. To make things worse, he had me so traumatized that I had never told anyone about it until he passed away and I was 15. Now we were having a conversation about standing up for ourselves at the table. I can't remember why. When suddenly my brother says, "What would you know about standing up for yourself when you couldn't denounce what our father did until he was already gone?" At that point, I was not only furious, but hurt. He basically called me a coward for being terrified to speak. I haven't spoken a word to him since then. Story 34. My ex accused me of cheating on him constantly. Late coming home from work, despite working in EMS and never having an exact time off. Cheating. In fact, anything slightly different from my own schedule was seen as definitive proof that I was cheating. Even being asked to come in late. I hang out with my best friend without him, even though he doesn't like her and wasn't interested in what we had planned. I'm cheating. Someone compliments me on Facebook. I obviously am secretly dating said person, but if I had the slightest issue with any woman he was speaking to, even one that had sent him pictures and expressed that when she slept with people she was thinking of him, I was controlling and won't let him have any female friends. And the thing that made me absolutely despise him was that he was talking to an ex-girlfriend, one that he had always talked about how he will always probably love her. Story 35. I had a very talented assistant during a work contract. When she graduated school, I hired her for a higher level position in another contract I was also working on. The manager asked me my opinion on whether or not we should rely on Wish to deliver some items with a time-sensitive deadline. And when I disagreed with him and said I didn't think that was wise, he quickly decided I wasn't worth his time. He started leaving me out of company meetings by giving me wrong dates or times, falsifying information that was supposed to have come from me, and repeatedly lost confidential paperwork I'd given him. The assistant had gotten the job. I texted her one day to ask how she was settling into her role because I know it can be rough working in such a fast-paced environment. I know I've struggled sometimes. And she sent it to our manager and implied it meant I was struggling with a job and not pulling my weight. I got pulled in for some kind of reprimand or final warning meeting, which she was also present at. She was silent the whole time, didn't make eye contact with me, and when asked to verify the absolute pile of lies this manager was spewing, she backed them up. I walked off the contract that day and never spoke to her again. I was floored because I'd spent 2 years coaching this kid and helping her become an incredible employee, and she ended up betraying me for absolutely no gain on her end. Story 36. To set the scene, I was 24 years old with a toddler and another one on the way. Married. Both kids were wanted and planned. No oopsies. We had a nice life. Decent little house, good group of friends, hobbies, decent jobs. We were enjoying life. My deranged mother got brain cancer. She was single and I was an only child, so caring for her as she very quickly went terminal fell on me. It was a terrible caregiving experience and not something I'd wish on my worst enemy. X decided he was being neglected. X cheats with girls who met on his trucking route. My mother was suffering from terminal brain cancer and he cheated on me because I was too busy for him. Between taking care of the suffering parent and keeping our kids alive. We divorced after she passed away. He ditched the plant kids with me and hasn't seen them in a decade. We haven't heard from him in a decade. He still tells people I stole them and won't let him see them. I know this because every so often someone reaches out to me to tell me what a monster I am for stealing his kids. I hate him. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.